Good morning. We will call this Douglas County Board of Commissioners special call meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, August 27th, 2019. We are here for the purpose of a public hearing this morning to consider the proposed millage rate. And with no further ado, I will ask our own Director of Finance, Ms. Jennifer Hallman, to come forward and render some discussion for us this morning.
Yes, good morning. Just like we did on the last two public hearings, I have the same presentation that I'll be presenting this morning before we open it up for the public hearing. There we go. Okay, what makes up the digest? Real property, and that is land and generally anything that is erected, growing, or affixed to the land. Personal property is everything that can be owned that is not real estate, such as inventories, livestock, machinery, and equipment are examples of personal property. You also have motor vehicles, mobile homes, timber, heavy-duty equipment. All of those categories equal your gross digest. You subtract out your exemptions, and then you come up with your net digest. As you know, citizens received their real property notices in the mail this year, and per our chief appraiser, 15% of them had no change because there was no significant market activity to merit a change from the prior year. 10% received a decrease in their assessment due to some continuing low bad sales in some neighborhoods. Some properties had some improvements removed, like a house burned down, utility building torn down. And some properties had acreage split off due to sales activity, which resulted in lower sales. The increases, 75% of the assessment increased. This was due to the most residential houses receiving an approximate net increase of 3 to 5% due to updating the base cost per square foot. Some neighborhoods received significant increases due to the strong sales in the neighborhood. Some properties had new improvements, such as a new house, a swimming pool, a new utility building. And then some property owners completed deed work to combine existing parcels into one bigger parcel, which increases the value of the now larger parcel. And as far as commercial improvements, they received an approximate net increase of 5 to 10% due to updating the base cost per square foot. We talk about the growth in the digest, and as you know, there's two types of growth in the digest. We'll talk about the first one, which is your reassessment inflationary growth, and this is due to the reassessment of property. Millage rate is rolled back for this type of growth to arrive at a base millage rate, and we'll discuss this rollback later in the presentation. Then we have new growth in the digest, and this is due to new or improved property that is included in the digest. So we'll talk about the gross digest first and real and personal property. When you talk about the gross digest, you're not including any exemptions, and the reassessment or inflationary growth in the real and personal gross digest was 3.95%. New growth was 3.16%, with a total real and personal gross digest increasing 7.11%. So when you take the reassessment growth and the new growth, they total $361,297,627. 56% of this growth was due to reassessment growth, while 44% was due to new growth. Give you a history on the new growth on the real and personal regarding the gross digest. You can see when we were hit by the recession, our digest took a hit. You can see in years 2010, 12, and 13, we actually experienced what we called negative growth. It wasn't until 2014 that we started seeing an uptick. Even though it was modest, it was at 0.79. 2015 was 2.84. 2016 was 0.97. 2017 was 5.62. 2018 was 2.39. The other categories within the gross digest is your motor vehicles. We're going to continue to see this category decline due to the title ad valorem tax that is being collected. So when you look at the total digest, you look at the gross digest, we had a change of 6.73%. Our exemptions went up as well by 14.5%. So our net digest experienced a 5.40% increase. Now that we're talking about the net digest, we're going to look at the reassessments. And of course, because we're talking about the net digest, we're talking about the value that includes exemptions. You can see that the reassessment net of exemptions was 2.5% growth. And for there to be no tax increase, state law requires the millage rate to be rolled back for any increase in the digest due to reassessment of existing real property. Therefore, it makes it revenue neutral from this year to the prior year. If the millage rate is not rolled back, we must advertise the tax increase and hold 3 public hearings, in which we have done, and this is the 3rd and final public hearing. The additional revenue for not rolling back would be approximately $1.1 million. Looking at the millage rate rollback, what you do is you take the reassessment value of $110 million and you come up with a millage equivalent. That millage equivalent is reduced by your prior year's millage rate. So our prior year millage rate was 10.213. Millage equivalent of the reassessed was 0.242. So when you subtract that out from 10.213, you get 9.971. Since the proposed rate of 10.213 is higher than the 2019 rollback rate of 9.971, it is considered an increase, even though it is the exact same millage rate as 2018. Talk about the net digest again. Let's talk about the new growth, which again, because we're talking about the net digest, we are talking about it net of exemptions. New growth experienced 2.9%, which will, with having 2.9% new growth, 1.3 million additional revenue from the prior tax year. We actually budgeted 1.5% new growth. So because we budgeted 1.5 and we actually got 2.9, we're actually going to see an increase of $800,000 in additional revenue than what we budgeted. I know this is a slide with a lot of numbers, just kind of give you a snapshot of a 10-year history of the tax year, what the general fund budget was each year, the value of the mill, the millage rate, the change in the millage rate from the prior year, the tax revenue that was levied for that tax year, as well as the change in the revenue that was levied from the prior year. Also shows that the cumulative revenue for new growth, even though in 14, 15, and 16 we did not experience any new growth, we were still recovering from the recession. You can see cumulatively through 2019, we've almost had about $4 million in new growth. The cumulative revenue for millage rate, if the millage rate was not rolled back since 2014, since it was rolled back beginning in 2014, you can see that we would have received $9.2 million. This chart, again, is just a visual showing you pretty much the numbers I've already spoken about. It's just showing the trend of the value of the mill. You can see pre-recession, 2009, a value of a mill was $4.3 million. We experienced a decline for 4 consecutive years, starting in 2010, 11, 12, 13, and 14. It wasn't until 2015 that we started experiencing that the value of the mill started going back up, but it didn't actually reach 2009 levels until 2018. And then you can see in 2019, the value of one mill is $4,643,002. As you know, we try to make sure that our digest is diversified so that we can have the tax dollars coming from different types of industry. You can see that our residential is still 56% of the digest. Commercial is around 25%. Industrial is around 14%. Motor vehicles is about 1%. We'll continue to see that decline due to TAVT. Your utility is 2.49%. Conservation, agriculture, and other make up the smaller percentages. This just shows you the value of each of those categories from this year to last year. And you can see that, again, we show that motor vehicles declined, and again, due to TAVT. Our industrial increased $111 million, our commercial increased $50 million, and our residential increased $186 million. As part of the advertising requirement that's required by the State of Georgia Department of Revenue, not only do we have to advertise that it's a tax increase, even though the millage rate we're proposing is the same as last year, we also have to show what that impact would be on the average fair market value of a house, of a homestead and a non-homestead property. According to our chief appraiser, a fair market value for a homestead property is $175,000. Therefore, when you could take the value at 40%, that's the assessed value, you back out the homestead exemption, the taxable value becomes $64,000. So when you compare that from the rollback millage rate compared to the proposed millage rate, you're looking at $15.49 for the year. For a non-homestead property, the fair market value is $200,000, and the difference in taxes paid if we remained at the millage rate of 10.213, it would be just under $20 a year. Again, this is numbers we've already went over, but this is a current 2019 property tax digest and 5-year history of levy that is required to be in the paper. It was in the paper, and it's just showing you each of the categories that we've just discussed, the value, the gross millage rate, the rollback for local option sales tax, and the taxes that are going to be levied for the current and prior 5 years. Where do your 2019 tax dollars go? If you live in the unincorporated area of the county, the Board of Education did adopt their millage rate yesterday. They adopted at 20.75 mills, and you'll have it on your agenda as well to accept and adopt their millage rate. They make up 67% of the tax bill. Even though the tax check, whether it comes from your personal account or from your escrow account, is written to the Douglas County Tax Commissioner, if you're in the unincorporated area and not exempt from Board of Education tax, then 67% of those dollars go to the Board of Education, while just under 33% go to county government. This is just a history of our millage rate adoption notes. We have had 2 public hearings on the 20th of August at 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. We're having this one today. After the public hearing, I would be asking for authorization to have a resolution to adopt both the Board of Education's millage rate as well as the Board of Commissioners millage rate. And that completes my presentation.
Thank you so much, Director Hallman. At this time, I would like to invite our public to engage in the conversation about the millage rate. At this time, I would like to open it up for those who have comments regarding this proposed millage rate, and I'll give you 3 minutes to come to the podium and speak, and when you come, if you could give your name and address, and then proceed to speak. We have anyone here that want to comment this morning?
I'm Sharon Bachtel, 6331 South Skyline Drive. I've been watching and listening to the BOC in public meetings and have a few comments. First, the BOC scheduled 3 public meetings to raise the millage rate. Were these scheduled at the convenience of the commission or the convenience of the public? All of these meetings were on a Tuesday, 2 of them in the morning when the majority of the public is at work. The night meeting started at 6 p.m., while many residents are still sitting on Interstate 20 or eating dinner. The attendance at your meetings was not very good, a dozen at the evening meeting. Does this low attendance account for the apathy by residents of taxes being raised or bad timing of the meetings? When Chairman Jones was elected, she said the BOC had overspent the budget by millions of dollars. This woke me up and made me wonder how this could happen. The 2019 budget was balanced with money from our reserve fund. To me, this is like using your savings account to survive. While watching the meetings, I see time and again the departments come back to ask for more money. The Community Service Board, through no fault of their own, needed $450,000. Thank goodness the Lord was watching over us and we got a check for $500,000 from the GDOT to cover this. The Senior Citizens Center has asked for $19,000 for paint and $20,000 for carpet. These items were cut from their original budget, but our county received $60,000 for an easement agreement. I had to email Ms. Hallman to find these facts out. I've only seen one commissioner, Commissioner Guider, vote against spending. Commissioner Robinson likes to talk about the Taj Mahal jail and the Taj Mahal animal shelter. I guess he forgets that a grand jury said we had to build a new jail. We had the choice of using general funds or the SPLOST. The SPLOST was the best deal, and yes, it is the big jail, but at the time we were housing prisoners from Fulton County. Also, better to be big than to pay more tax money to add on. The old animal shelter was an embarrassment to this county. It is a wonder we were not fined for inhumane conditions. I am proud of the new animal shelter, and I hope that it is kept up. We need jails and animal shelters. It's ironic that Commissioner Robinson does not mention the Taj Mahal concession stand at Boundary Waters. Who spends $800,000 on a concession stand that will be used maybe 3 months of the year? It seems like our SPLOST spending is going to put a big dent on our general funds in the coming years. Fixing and taking care of our older buildings and parks should have been put at the top of our SPLOST list instead of rushing to build new projects that will cost us down the road. Our older parks are an embarrassment to us when people from out of town come to games. When you visit parks in other counties, you can really see the difference. Why wasn't the money for paint and carpet at the Senior Citizen Center taken from SPLOST instead of the general fund? These SPLOST maintains the schools. Why shouldn't SPLOST maintain our parks? Commissioner Carthen, at the first public meeting, asked what the citizens want, so I would like to tell you what I want. First, I want safety. If my sheriff asks for something, give it to him. Second, I want to drive on roads without getting my teeth rattled for driving over potholes. Third, I don't want to sit in traffic on Highway 5 and Chapel Hill. Fourth, I want the county and parks and buildings and roads maintained. I want to be proud of where I live. One question that Commissioner Guider asked at one of the other public meetings was how this millage rate affects the small businesses, and I never heard the answer. $15 for residents might not seem very much to some, but someone on a fixed income will be affected. Since 2016, we have seen our property taxes go up through assessments. They went up so much that twice this commission has had to roll back the millage rate. The question is, do we need to raise the millage rate because of overspending and not sticking to the budget? We were lucky this year receiving funds to cover projects added to the budget. Will we be that lucky next year? Tax assessments will level up, but we have to worry about rising costs for health care and pensions. We have a bus system that is not doing very well that will have to be paid for from general funds down the road if we don't get another grant, which, by the way, is still tax money. Are we getting in over our heads? I ask the commissioners to watch their spending and stick to the budget. I don't have a money tree growing in my backyard.
Thank you so much, Ms. Balchko. Thank you. I initially, Board of Commissioners, said 3 minutes, but I want to hear the citizens out this morning, so I'm going to push it to 5 minutes. I'll give you a little more time. 3 minutes is really not a lot of time.
No, I'll be pretty brief. Don Ray Leonard, Creekside Manor, District 2. Why are we here today? Could it be the mismanagement of taxpayer monies by the Finance Committee Chair? Let's talk finances. Madam Chair, we should all question the wisdom of your appointing Mr. Kelly Robinson to chair the Finance Committee. believing him to be some kind of financial guru, when in fact he doesn't even own up to his personal finances and commitments. This is a stack of lawsuits against Kelly Robinson. People have threatened him to take him to court to hold him accountable for his own personal responsibilities, all during the tenure as a Douglas County Commissioner. The mere existence of these open court records show the Commissioner Robinson does not merit this appointment.
Ms. Leonard, this is about taxes.
This is germane.
No,
He does not merit this appointment. It's no wonder that most of the SPLOST projects in District 2 have far surpassed their cost estimates, mainly due to expanding the size and scope of the projects. SPLOST funds are taxpayer money. SPLOST is not a slush fund for a select few to spend without regard to the needs of Douglas County as a whole. Contrary to what you believe, citizens of this county do not condone negligent behavior and have no confidence or trust in the Commissioner's ability to manage Douglas County finances. Surely there is someone on this Board of Commissioners who is more qualified to chair this critical committee and do the work for all of the people in Douglas County. I firmly believe that Commissioner Kelly's mismanaging of county finances is why we are here today and now faced with a tax increase.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Leonard. Any other comments? Mr. John Tomasky, please come forward.
Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Well, first I will express my appreciation for the chairman having extended the time beyond 3 minutes, which would be hardly adequate for a public hearing. To a great extent, the micro aspects of these matters are neither here nor there, because the plantation system the system is alive and well in Georgia, even though the planters are long gone. We've got our carpetbaggers, we've got our scalawags, we've got our field workers, some of whom aspire to be trustees and be welcome at the Great House, even sometimes dine at the long table. And 3 specifics of this are rooted in the structure of government. 5 commissioners on the Board of Commissioners govern really very little. First of all, what county commissions can do, irrespective of home rule, is severely and explicitly limited by state law. Beyond that, most of the governing at the county level is done by the so-called ancillary instrumentalities of the county government, which are in fact the main body of the government, especially the more powerful, the WSA, and the so-called Development Authority. And on those boards, the governors are not elected by the people, they're appointed. And they're appointed by the Board of Commissioners. However, they all come mostly from the realm of the organization which really constitutes at county and state level the parallel government in Georgia. And sometimes, in many counties, there have been grassroots organizations pop up. Very often there used to be a taxpayers association in most counties. And so what? You're a taxpayer, so is everybody. You really need to know how to frame issues, because how issues are framed are how they're going to be discussed. And if you say you're a taxpayer, well, so what? The illegal aliens are taxpayers. They have to pay sales tax. What is the key issue is are you a net taxpayer who pays out more than you get back in services, or are you a net tax beneficiary? Are you getting the sweetheart contracts, the jobs in government at three times the salary you could get in the private sector, if you could get one? Are you one of these large companies coming in, getting great tax rebates where there is no quantitative attempt to balance what tax revenue is definitely being given up now in exchange for only vaguely described future benefits for which there is no provision for performance guarantees? So until these things are settled, governance is a very elusive concept here. And another element which is significant in this context is that there is almost never a referendum in Georgia where it's accepted with the support of a majority of registered voters. All the state law requires is a majority of those who come out and vote. And those behind the proposition, they certainly get their people out to vote. And it is contrary to basic rules of governance, such as Robert's rules, for an enumerated body to require less than a majority of the enumerated members. And registered voters are an enumerated body. So how can Georgia justify putting through referenda that's supported only by a minority of registered voters, not a majority? I had lived in a jurisdiction where a majority of registered voters was required. And when all sorts of hokey propositions were coming up, that's how we would defeat them. We wouldn't vote. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Tomasky. Anyone else here to speak or comment? With that being said, now this public hearing is closed and allows an opportunity for our Board of Commissioners to dialogue and speak. Board of Commissioners, I ask that we keep our, I won't say your comments brief, but we'll go with a 5-minute segment, and certainly if you want a 2-minute rebuttal, that's certainly good, fair with me as well. I just ask that my clerk manage our time, okay? And Board of Commissioners, do we have a question? Any comment? Okay, Vice Chairman Robinson.
Absolutely. Director Hallman, please come forward. All right, just be on standby just for a minute, and I'll come back to that, and I'll be tight in my comments. And while we recognize that this forum is not a political one, and this is not time to campaign, we know it rules in times past when commentary is made, one can rebut. I refuse to stoop that low right now at this moment. That will come. I appreciate public comment, you know, and it's like, but is that the best you can do, right? The attacks on, we all care. We're all neighbors. We love our county. We may have differences of opinions, but it's like, is that the best we've got to attack? But okay, we'll come back to that. So, public hearing. All right, so we're talking about this millage rate, and this is simply where we are. The comments were made that, yes, the county, you know, for the past 10 years, we didn't maintain much. You know, I beg to differ. I appreciate differences of opinion because we can coexist. No, you spent too much money on that jail. You overbuilt it, and no, it was not a grand jury. No, Judge Bodiford did not order us to do that. That was a choice. It was a choice that the leadership chose to put before the people. No problem, right? So you overbuilt by 40%, which is Macy Benz, 40 million, which is the equivalent of the 45 million we're using today on the SPLOST. 40 million could have been used to maintain the roads in those same parks and roads that we didn't do for 10 years. Don't act righteous right now that now all of a sudden for 10 years we got to make all this up in 2 years. No, we're not going to be able to get there that way. Right? I'm going to come back moving forward. It's steady. We have enough. It's sufficient. New growth is coming. I appreciate, Madam Chair, adhering to the advice that was given, which is set your budget based on the new growth, right? But we're right there at the turn. Yes, we got the commercial coming online, but I'm going to go back to the first 2 public hearings that people didn't hear. You need about 18 months. It's coming in steady. You can't control the macro. No, 2 months. No, we didn't. I mean, yeah, we can say that we moved the money around and say that GDOT covered it. No, we used the TAN money, that $2 million on the backside, to push some of that through. We're not quite there. Tell the truth. So really right now, it's like, okay, we got, what, 2 million? Okay, we pushed CSB through. We had website. The priorities that was for last year didn't quite make it. We amended the budget. Great, right? We still got a park and a senior center that needs to be accounted for. The salaries are not in there yet. We waited 2 years. Like the referendum was passed, it needs to be in the budget. You need to be setting aside some now. You don't want to wait until when it pops. Set aside the money, right? So my position of not rolling back is very clear. It's like we need to accommodate for that which the majority of the public voted for, just like with that jail. Some people couldn't stand the fact that that jail was built, but we had to go with it. Some people didn't like the fact that the referendum was just passed. It is what it is, right? So we're not going to argue that. We're going to accommodate what has been passed by law, right? So that $1.1 million needs to be in place to accommodate those 2 assets that are coming online, let alone we'll let the future take care of the future. So I'm going to just pause there for right now, Madam Chair, which is simply, no, it's not necessary to roll back. Not on this one. You had 6 years of rollback. There's been a lot of mistakes that was made in the prior administration that we had to clean up in this administration. We're doing good, but it doesn't have to be heroic either. You don't have to overprove anything, right? Just do the math. Do the math. Madam Chair, I yield.
Okay.
That's within my time.
Thank you.
I had some time. I gave it back.
Thank you so much, Vice Chairman Robinson. Commissioner Guida.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As the lady reminded us, the millage rate is determined by your budget. So, and we do not plan just one budget. We plan out like 5 years. That's what Mr. Carthen suggested that we do. We had more growth than anticipated. We had more than last year. We usually have funds left over at the end of the year because our department heads are very frugal about spending somebody else's money, the taxpayers' money. So we anticipate maybe $1 million extra at the end of this year too, right?
Based on trends, we're around,
trends.
yeah, 1 to 2%.
But where's the money that we did not spend last year and the year before?
It was used to balance 2019's budget.
Well, we put it in the fund balance, but then we spend it, is what happens. And that's what I fear for any tax increase. We will spend it. As I said, the budget determines the rate. When we add something during the year that's going to affect all subsequent budgets, then we need to know that. We should be asking ourselves, can we afford to do it? That's what we rely on our staff and everybody to tell us, if we do this, it's going to add the same amount to next year and the next year and the next year. So can we afford to do it? Nobody ever said anything we couldn't afford the raises. For the past 2 years, we had 2.5 raises, and nobody ever told me, hey, this is going to come back to bite us. So I'm just saying we need to always ask ourselves, can we afford it? Other things were added to this year's budget in the middle of the year that was not even in the budget. Some of them's going to affect budgets henceforth, right? We spend like we are not concerned about next year when we're supposed to be concerned about next year. And be honest, some of us, if we have the money at our hands, we're going to spend it. Just look at our splosh dollars, as someone pointed out. This non-rollback, or if we don't roll it back, it will hurt the small businesses. That's mainly who it's going to hurt. They don't get the exemptions that offset the increase in their assessment. They don't get the abatements that the large corporations have. They pay school tax, so the schools are going up. Most of them's in the city. They're going to pay more there. They're already hurting because of online sales. We see that. We had a business close just this week. They are the blood and soul of the county and the community because they're the ones that furnish the jobs. They furnish the jobs that's going to affect households and everything. So we've got to remember that the tax rate is determined by the, is determined by the budget, and that we have to be careful what we put in the budget. That is what we need to control, is our budget, our spending. And so that is why I am not for not rolling. I am not for rolling the tax rate back, because if we have extra money in the fund balance, like you said, we'll spend it. And I yield back.
Okay. Thank you so much, Commissioner Guider. Commissioner Guider, could you just restate your last statement, because it could be probably confusing for our clerk. Did you say you're not in, what are you saying so they could?
I am not in favor of rolling back the millage rate. I mean,
You're saying it opposite.
Okay, I'm sorry.
You're in favor.
I'm in favor of rolling back the millage rate. There we go. I'm sorry.
Believe me, I struggled with that too, trying to get it flipped around. Okay, thank you. I just want to make
Just
sure.
leaving it like it is. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Thank
Any
you.
other comment? Oh, did you yield back?
I yield back.
Okay, thank you. Any other comment from Commissioner Carthen?
I appreciate when citizens come and express your voices and your opinions. I appreciate your emails. I appreciate when you take a part of your government, because it truly is your government. We are only here because you put us here. So when these issues come up, we do want to hear your voices. So I thank the citizens who took my words at heart and came out. I do just want to clarify some things. We're not raising the millage rate. That's one thing. We are not raising the millage rate. So I don't want anyone out there who's listening and those who are watching to think that we're raising the millage rate so that we can get extra money. That's not what we're doing. We're just not rolling back the millage rate. And there are a lot of reasons, if it is the will of the board to not roll it back, there are a lot of reasons why. We keep talking about things such as the new buildings that are coming on board. They are, and I have full confidence in our chairman that she will watch the dollars. She doesn't spend, we don't spend crazily. Everything that we spend is open record. Jennifer Holloman makes sure that she gives us a report, and that report is put on the website for anyone to access. This is a transparent government. I know I only make $27,000 a year doing this. I could not pay my mortgage. I could not do any of the things that me and my 4 kids and my husband needed on $27,000. I don't take what I make and use it haphazardly. I wouldn't take the dollars of the citizens and use it haphazardly. The things that my citizens ask for, the things that they email me for, the things that Ms. Batchel sat up here and said today are real concerns of mine. Safety. My sheriff needs cars right now. My sheriff needs things right now that he has expressed to us. The roads. I drive the same roads you guys do, and I want those roads to be in pristine condition. I have a 2002. It is yet holding on. So my roads need to be in good condition so that I can keep that 02, because I don't want to get another car and have a car note. So I concur with you. I want good roads. Congestion. Nobody wants to sit in traffic congestion. We need turn lights and signals and other things that will help to alleviate. I live off Chapel Hill Road. That road needs to be widened. Those things need to be put in the budget for future use. Parks maintained. I agree. We have not maintained our parks. Now, yes, I understand that most people voted to have a jail put in place. But when you spend that type of money on a jail, yet you forego parks, things that we use on a daily basis, things that our children use, things that associations use, you put us at risk, and you make us want to take our children outside the county to get those type of services. To me, that's unacceptable. We need to make sure that we maintain those things, and those things need to be in the budget, and they need to be accounted for correctly. But yet, we have to remember that we only get 33% of every dollar that we collect in sales tax and in property tax. We only get to use those 33% of that $1, and we have to use it wisely, and we have to spread it across almost 28 departments. We do the best we can with what we have, and I implore you to really keep an eye on what we're doing. If you see something that you think we shouldn't be spending on, voice it. Because I could tell you, before I got here, Commissioner Mulcair would tell you, I would email him about things. I am sitting here for you. I'm sitting here for me. Hold us accountable. Make sure that when we do things, your voice matters, because it does. I am in favor of keeping the millage rate where it is. If we roll it back, we won't account for inflation. What people seem to forget is that the $800,000 that we spent on concession stand, that went out to bid. It went out to bid, and there were those who came in above the $800,000. These things are not cheap. It is not cheap to install, keep up, and do the things that we do, just like it's not cheap for your home. We want the best possible for our county, but we need your help in doing so. So with that, Madam Chair, I yield.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay. All right. Commissioner Mitchell?
Yes, thank you. You know, I couldn't leave without at least having some kind of dialogue with this. Let me first, as Commissioner Carthen stated, I want to thank all the citizens who actually took the time out of their busy schedule to come by and talk to us. And for those who called, text, emailed, and I know we don't get a chance to return them all or talk to them all, but thank you for getting involved in your government. Now on to the business at hand. Okay, we're talking about reassessment value. As stated a moment ago from my colleague, this is not, and let's be clear so we won't mislead the general public, this is not a millage rate increase. Your millage rate stays the same. And Jennifer, if you would acknowledge that, am I correct in the statement? Is the millage rate changing? Because I noticed one of my colleagues keeps stating that there's a millage rate increase, which is not. Just verify that for me first.
Correct. The proposed millage rate for this year is 10.213, which is the exact same millage rate as it was last year.
That is correct. And the rollback is what we're speaking of, and that's based on the reassessment value of many properties within Douglas County. Would that be correct?
That is correct.
Okay, just for, verifying, just to make sure that we're speaking the same language and not screaming fire in a theater. So with that being stated, the general public requested to us on a referendum that they would like to have a SPLOST. In that SPLOST referendum, there were transportation needs of about 51%, and please quote me on these if I'm not incorrect in making those statements. There was a Parks and Rec percentage of 17%, and fire and EMS of 32%. Okay.
That is correct.
With that, I think most of us knew, because this is not the first public hearing I've had in reference to rollbacks. I've had these conversations with those that come to my coffee conversation in my various town hall meetings. We talk about this on a regular as to why or why not we should or we shouldn't roll back. And I think most citizens that I've spoken with are pretty much clear. They're all not in agreement, don't get it twisted. But most that hear and understand what this is all about, I really think that for those of us who don't know, when Roy Barnes put this together, it wasn't to confuse the general public in reference to a millage rate increase versus a tax increase. And the reasoning for that, and I don't want to speak for him, he might could come here and speak for himself, was because for some that would try to use that rollback as to get more property tax dollars from the citizens in where they live or where they govern. I have actually been talking with my legislators in reference to trying to reestablish that wording, and we're working on that so that we can, I still think we should acknowledge the mere fact of there is additional funds from new growth and reassessed values that we should acknowledge and tell where it should or shouldn't be going or what we're doing with the funds. But it shouldn't scare the general public as though it's a millage rate / millage rate increase. I think that's where the confusion comes in. So, with that being said, back to the referendum. It was stated that they wanted certain things during the SPLOST. And I think for most of us who understand that part of it, there comes along an additional expense because the brick and mortar is being paid for and through SPLOST, and that is a tax as stated in earlier. They're absolutely correct. It's a tax. But when the building or the brick and mortar is done, now you have an additional expense that comes along with the operation side that I've spoke about before. One of my colleagues on this board stated and accepted a 24% then millage rate increase that I said years before that, if we continue to roll back, this is where you'll end up. We're going down that same path. And I've said that's to this current board, and I'm glad that at least now most have actually took the time and really understood what my cry was all about. Because just speaking of the Senior Citizen Center, from my calculations, it would probably cost every bit of $400,000 to $500,000 just to run that one annually. Would that not be correct?
That is correct.
To the building over at the Boundary Waters, what's roughly the numbers of that would cost?
Same.
Roughly, okay, so then the fire station, not to include CSB, Community Service Board, that we just recently found out that, as we stated before, we're not married with Cobb. We thought we were, but we wasn't legally married. So now we've got that cost, that service that we provide to the citizens of Douglas County, that we didn't expect that unforeseen cost of about $450,000 that we had to pull from somewhere out of our budget. Now, I know we have our savings account, which we call the
Fund balance.
Fund balance, thank you. We have that fund balance account, but just strictly in layman's terms, a savings account that we have to use for these unforeseen things that tend to happen. However, that cost there alone is going to be ongoing. It's not going to go away. Now, we hope that, and some of us try to budget these types of costs by saying, well, there will be grant funds and other funds that will come from the state and the federal and other guys that may or may not come. That may be true. But do you calculate that, or do you make a risk of that caliber, or do you find, as my colleague stated, that 18-month run, are we sustainable to pull off this? That's where the question mark comes in. So I'm very concerned with, if we continue down the same path, which we've got SDS, LOST, and other negotiations that are forthcoming, that we're making the statement to the general public that when we go through the LOST negotiations, we're going to do better, or we're going to get more costs, or we're going to get more, or the city and others will pay their fair share. We've been down that road before, and I think we did a fair job, not a good job, even recently. And I think you know my sentiments on that. However, but that will be a task in itself, but you calculating the dollars and cents on LOST, the local option sales tax. I would beg to differ, because when we get through that negotiations, I hope you prepare yourself for the outcome. Just in closing, when you're collecting, and Jennifer helped me with this, when the tax commissioner is collecting on this particular millage rate, and we're going back a couple of years of rollback, 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 every time we roll back, if we're using an analysis of an analogy of $100, so he was collecting $100 on our previous, let's say on this particular millage rate, but we roll back, he's now still collecting 100% at the great job he does. But now he'll be collecting, I'm going to say 97% or 94% of 100%. The dollar amount, let me make sure what I'm trying to get you to understand is that the dollar amount will get smaller every time we roll back.
Yes, absolutely.
So his collection will become just that. Whatever the millage rate is when we roll back will be the smaller, he will no longer get 100% of 100% of what we're collecting today on the millage rate that we have today. It'll be lesser. So now you got to understand your revenue now have shrunk by 2%, by what is it, 0.2, what's that number that we're considering rolling down?
0.242.
So that number is what you got to understand, but multiply that compounded number 3, 4, 5 years ago, because that's the route we took. Now I would never vote against. If this board suggested that we would do a rollback, I would not vote against that. However, as I've stated, and I'll continue to make this statement, I hope you're looking into the future. That's why I talk about the leadership side of things, that you gotta be cognizant about what's happening in the future. So that's why it's easy to manage a budget, but it's harder to lead as to where this budget will take you. That's where we're falling short. And I think that's the concern of most. New growth, that means people and or property, in a nutshell. The sheriff, as stated by my colleague, needed, if I'm not mistaken, Jennifer, was it about 50 cars? Or help me out. I know we only got 22. Okay, he needed a lot more cars than we gave him. So we've compounded the next budget cycle on the additional cars that he needs. Well, now it doesn't mean that that other number go away of 20 cars. So now he needs 50 cars plus the 20 that you had. The number doesn't go away. You're only compounding the problem. So, as I stated, I just think it only makes sense as to where this county is going. And not that I want to or make the amount of $19 or $20 that you came up with the number that we're dealing with. I don't want to minute that number. No, I think every dollar that I can bring back to my household means a lot and will help my family and what we deal with. However, I think it makes more sense if we want to continue the excellent service that we provide to the citizens of Douglas County, And the only way you're going to do that is to move forward and lead the county in that direction and not shock the county with rhetoric of a millage rate increase. I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Mitchell. And I'll just close out, and then we will certainly move forward with the vote. Yes. Okay. Before I start, I want to make sure I give privilege for the commissioners to have a rebuttal. Vice Chairman Robinson, do you have a rebuttal?
Yep, and I'll keep it real short, 2 minutes, or whatever you said was necessary.
2.
Again, and I acknowledge all my colleagues' comments. Everybody gets to coexist, right? This is not a zero-sum game. We have different degrees of understanding, different experiences, different backgrounds, but nonetheless, we bring to the table what we see. I think for the most part, again, we're healthy. We're moving forward. But as the auditor said in our last, when he came and presented, I looked him dead in the eye and said, a policy position that you keep rolling back is unsustainable. He looked all 5 of us in the eye and said, yes, Commissioner Robinson, you're right. This is nothing deep. You keep rolling back your revenue and your expenses are going on, they're going to crash. We know we have commercial coming online. It will catch up. The point is, it's a hedge. It doesn't, my personal experience, it doesn't invalidate my understanding. I appreciate that, but you can't make it from here. You have to make adjustments. You have to make plans. And I'll leave you with this story. So me and Madam Guider are driving down the street one day, so we're in the car together. And we're going to ACCG in Atlanta, right? And we have a plan to get there at a certain time to meet Commissioner Mitchell. It was a plan, how to get there. Go down I-20, get off at Spring Street, cut up and over, Baker Street, come up at the Hilton, no problem. This is 6 o'clock in the morning. And we're driving, we have a plan, right? So 2 people in the car together, plan, she's driving. We get on Spring Street. Now, it's early in the morning. I'm looking at, I'm not paying attention for the most part. I'm looking at my phone, and I look out at the corner of my eye, and I'm like, oh my God, you just passed MLK. Like, stop, 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 stop. She drove through the barricade. The Spring Street Bridge is out, totally. I'm like, stop, 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 stop. Back up. Let's adjust our plan. Now, I'm just doing what I do. I'm not driving. But I had enough insight to say, hey, you need to adjust your plan. She drove through the barricade. Like, you're the one that can see. Now, my point is, it's okay to make adjustments to your plan. It's okay, it's just a plan. You can amend it just like watching Georgia game this weekend. They're like, yeah, Georgia, state's going to go ahead and they got a budget, but they're going to amend it again. Come on, guys. Let's grow up with our narrative. Mr. Maskey, you said it. Come on, frame it right. Move forward. We're in the weeds. We're better than this. But it is shifting. You've got new leadership. We're going in a different direction. We don't have to maintain the past. We get it. There's 2 sides that want something. We have to pick a side, which way we're going to take this, and that's pretty much it. Keep this real simple. But I appreciate, again, everybody's comments are necessary. At the end of the day, we have to take a position. We can't abstain. We can't run. Take a position. I yield back.
Thank you so much, Vice Chairman Robinson. And then if you would just stay at the podium, Director Holman. If you mentioned several times that you say our motor vehicles are declining because of TABT. If you could just refresh the citizens, and I believe wholeheartedly in transparency, didn't we just get an increase? We moved from 50% to 65% is what we're expecting from years going forward, and that just occurred this month, right?
That is
so
correct.
That's usually we will base those projections off probably receiving about $120,000 more per month. So we're not guessing on that. That's a known fact. So that's coming forward, and also. I think a narrative was put out there for the public indicating that we used our savings to balance the budget. I recall meeting within my finance team. I depend wholeheartedly on critical thinkers, those who know how to understand without violating the general accounting principles. I don't recall us ever putting anything in the fund balance because, of course, we had raises, as Commissioner Guider mentioned earlier, that we wanted to give, and no one hedged or nudged me and say, we can't give raises to the staff, because it's been 5 to 6 years since some of our staff members had increases, so I was very comfortable doing that based on the guidance and the navigation of my finance team. And then also, I look at new growth. That new growth has just been a blessing. It has allowed us to sustain the storm. And then I look at, we talked about sheriff's cars. We have not paid for 22, we paid for 32 cars. And then also the sheriff's budget when I came into office was $33 million, today is $37 million. So him and I, the sheriff and I work very closely together, so he appreciates that additional $4 million that this administration has actually fueled into his budget. So I just want to clarify those things before I start. And also I looked at, again, I'm more of an analysis type person. I looked at our new growth that's coming, and that's $800,000. We have some unclaimed funds out there, about maybe $900,000. I'll just shave a little bit off a TAVT increase, which I just talked about, which is a $1.2 million increase. Some lost revenue funds, which is your local option sales tax, which is another additional $1.2 million. And the Greta funds, we'll just leave those alone. That was just a moment in time, that $575,000, which offset that $450,000 that we had to add into the budget. But after conducting a thorough comparison analysis, I just I cannot allow what happened in the past to with the previous administration to define the future of this county. I cannot vote in good conscience to increase the millage rate, and I don't want to say increase the millage rate, but not to roll back, because I feel that it is important that we roll back on our citizens. And I'm very concerned about those small businesses, number one, because they're the heartbeat of our communities. And then our apartment renters, their rent is going up, and I know by firsthand, having someone that lives in an apartment as a family member, those rents will go up. And then also, as a result of compounding miscalculations made by the previous administration, is it fair to make the citizens of this county pay? This administration has absorbed numerous unexpected expenses from the previous administration, such as the Greta, that was $1.3 million, and that was a long-standing error. And that was before Miguel Valentin, who is our new Director of Transportation. So we were able to resolve that, but it had to hit that 2018 fund balance, and we just had to take the hit. And then in 2017, we had a $2.5 million increase to the pension plan, and I was under the standing that this was due to actuaries, and I depend on my finance team to navigate me and provide good information. And I've learned in life that people don't do what you expect, they do what you inspect. And I had to inspect. I had the privilege of sitting in a meeting the other day and found that the $2.5 million that hit the new growth back in 2017, I was celebrating at 5.5%, was due to 5 years of unreported compensation from 2012 to 2017 from the previous administration, but it hit in 2017. So that was another hit. And then our recent courthouse renovation was first discussed in 2008. That's when discussions took place. But the money was appropriated in 2015, and that was before Ramona. And however, the original estimate of the courthouse was really $550,000. But when the project was completed, it was a total of $1.3 million, and this administration had to absorb $800,000. Douglas County citizens deserve better, and they hired and entrusted me to safeguard and scrutinize their hard-earned tax dollars, and I will not waver from my commitment. Our citizens and our small business owners and our apartment renters should not have to pay for the sins of the previous administration. I have come to terms, people don't do what you expect. I said that earlier, they do what you inspect. And I am very dissatisfied with the fact that these errors were already known prior to my arrival, but were sort of swept under the rug and left for this administration to deal with. That's a whole nother conversation that I will have with my responsible cabinet members at a later time. Despite all the obstacles and the backlog of unfinished projects we inherited from the previous administration, our new growth has been magical. And I believe that it will move us in a position of sustainability. Again, as I mentioned, the local option sales tax, the TABT, the unclaimed funds. I won't even mention Greta, the 2.9% new growth, the not on digest that has not already been calculated. That's some more money that's coming forward down the pike. And then also not even to mention the online sales that are coming in 2020, January 2020. We will start, this county will start receiving proceeds from online sales, and I know it's a lot of activity out there. I can't quantify that yet. We have Stitch Fix that's getting ready to cut the ribbon in October. We have Switch that I understand that the certificate of occupancy will be given in December. And pending property, we have whether it's residential, industrial, and commercial in the queue. The fundamentals of budgeting requires critical thinking, constant decision-making, discipline, and the ability to manage the unexpected. In my opinion, we have a sustainable budget for the next 18 months with the understanding we must remain steady and we must complete projects that are currently in the queue and not over throttle. We must remain composed. We do have a SPLOST. A lot of counties don't have one. We have one that's, we just need to work our plan. And keep in mind that the SPLOST is a saving grace for this county. And I believe that if we just pace ourselves, and that's very important, and I believe that's some of the discussions I had with my colleagues, particularly my vice chairman. I said, the goal, he said, you're not going to get there. I said, no, you won't get there if we continue to spend. You have to slow it down like you do in your own household. Just slow it down. And I had one of our citizens that started off with Madam Chair. Madam Chair has made it very clear from day one that she is in favor of rolling this back simply because we're not, this 1.1 million won't do anything. I've just given a playbook of 4.6 million that's going to already be in this budget. We just have to slow down. Number one, we gave a huge raise last year, 5%. That's unheard of in the United States. But I was trying to make up for the difference of those years that our staff have just gone without. But what I'm not going to do is work with the finance team that, just everything is always emotional and we are stressed out because I see the numbers, I'm looking at it. Will we have to slow down? Yes, we have to slow it down for just a second, just to get caught up and get our breath. I believe we've done a lot in 33 months, more than ever anyone would ever imagine that someone could do in 33 months. We have worked a miracle in this county. And with that being said, I have no further discussion. I will call the question. Board of Commissioners. Clerk, is this going to be electronic, this vote?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so the citizens can see. All right.
It would depend on what motion comes from the board, Madam Chair, whether it's electronic or not.
Well, what's on the,
All right. The first is the Board of Education.
Okay.
we can do that.
Board of Commissioners. Now we move into the, I'm finished with you, Director Holman. Thank you. Board of Commissioners, we move on to our resolutions, and at this time, Board of Commissioners, do we have a resolution to adopt the Board of Education 2019 millage rate?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? We have a motion and a second. Please prepare to cast your votes.
Are we doing this?
We have a 5-0 unanimous vote to accept and adopt the Board of Education's 2019 millage rate. Board of Commissioners, I'm moving on to tab number 2 under resolutions. Do we have a motion to adopt the resolution for the Douglas County Board of Commissioners 2019? It's not reading right.
Does it
Lisa.
state the event?
Yeah, well, here's Here's where we're at, Madam Chair. You have advertised a particular rate that is not the rollback rate. If you, as there's a motion to adopt the advertised rate, it will not be the rollback rate. Am I correct, Jennifer? If there is a motion to do something else, it will have to be worded as such.
Okay. Do we have a motion to do anything else, Board of Commissioners?
I make a motion that we roll back the millage rate to the 2018 rate. I mean, to 2019.
Second.
What? Wait a minute. I think we're
When you
confused.
stated 2018 rate, that is what's being proposed. So if you want to roll it back, then you need to say the 9 point.
Well, we don't have those up here. We don't have any millage rates. We're having to depend on our memory from last year or something.
Okay, I just didn't want you to say last year's rate. You want to roll back.
Yes. I make a motion that we roll the millage rate back.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Please prepare to cast your votes.
It's got to.
Oh, okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor of rolling the millage rate back, please indicate by raising your right hand. Okay. We have a 2-3 vote, and I didn't see anybody's hand, so it's 2-3 vote. So we will be according to this. The motion does not carry, so we need to call a motion to adopt, right? Okay?
Need another motion, Madam Chair.
Okay.
It's not automatic. They got to approve the millage rate. You need some other motion, including potentially a motion to adopt the advertised rate, Madam
Okay.
Chair.
Do we have a motion to adopt the advertised rate of the Douglas County Board of Commissioners 2019 millage rate?
So moved as stated.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please, can we vote on this one?
I would raise hands on this one.
No, I want it to be advertised. You
I'm
have
sorry?
it. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Because it is on the electronic side.
Okay.
Okay.
It can be electronic.
All right.
We have a 3-2 vote, and the motion carries to adopt this millage rate. All right, Board of Commissioners, this millage rate will be adopted, and we'll move on to new business. Tab number 3, authorization to advertise for a public hearing to consider amending the Douglas County Code of Ordinance, Chapter 14, Article 3, Utility Easements, Sections 14-40 through 14-45 and 14-54, and adding new Article 9, Sections 14-101 through 14-105, pertaining to regulating small wireless facilities and antenna in the public right-of-way. Do we have a motion to authorize for this advertisement, Board of Commissioners?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If our own Miguel Valentin, our Director of DOT, could just give us a little update about it. Would you do that for me?
Certainly. Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. This change in our ordinance is required as a result of new legislation that was passed earlier this year regulating the activities of small cell providers in the right-of-way. Previously, they were highly restricted, and this new statute that was passed back in May gives them a lot more leeway. It also sets the criteria for how the review process goes at the local level and what fees can be charged to them. So in order to amend the code, it requires a public hearing.
Okay. Thank you. All right, thank you so much, Director Valentine. Board of Commissioners, we have a motion and a second. Please prepare to cast your votes for this advertisement of the public hearing. Okay, we have a 5-0 unanimous vote, and the motion carries. Thank you so much, Commissioner Mitchell. I drifted off for a second. All right. If there's nothing else to come before this board, this meeting is adjourned.
Very good.